been writing a paper with Dwara Research over the span of 6 months on some of the challenges and management techniques that we can put in place to mitigate such UPI frauds. So without further ado, I'm very happy to welcome our moderator, Mr. Venkatesh Murthy, Senior Director at the Data Security Council of India. He is an absolute veteran person when it comes to law enforcement regulation. He heads our CCITR division. So we're very excited to have with us Venkatesh, sir. Please come on stage. We also have Ms. Deepthi George, Deputy ED and Head of Strategy at Dwara Research, an old-time collaborator of DSCI. She is heading Dwara's portion of writing this document, and I'm sure she will talk about it more when she has her time on stage. Please come up. And we also have Mr. Piyush Singh. Very excited to have him with us. He's, of course, the founder of the Inclusive FinTech Hub. And finally, we have Mr. Sameer Ratolikar. Thank you so much, Sameer sir. We unfortunately are just putting up your image on the screen. He, of course, for those of you who don't know, is CISO of HDFC, again an old-time collaborator and friend of DSCI. Thank you so much. Venkatesh sir, whenever you're ready, you can start.
Thanks, Anisha. So, when we talk about securing our financial transactions, fraud prevention is the thing that comes to our mind. When we talk about prevention of fraud, you would always focus more on the fraud prevention controls and methods, and we pay very little attention about the criminal's mindset. It is a very well-known fact that the criminals are the perpetual early adopters of technology. Any new technology that comes in, criminals are the early adopters. I would like to draw your attention about an individual, a very famous, notorious bank robber called Willie Sutton. There is a Willie Sutton rule. If people having this fraud management background, they would be very well aware about that guy. So when he was arrested, unfortunately when he was arrested and the interrogator questioned him, why did you rob banks? His answer was amazing. He said, because I enjoyed it. I loved it. I was more alive when I was inside a bank, robbing it at any other point of time in my life. He further said, I enjoyed everything about it so much that 1 or 2 weeks later, I looked for the next robbery. That's a kind of typical mindset. The Maslow's pyramid, whatever the hierarchical needs, whatever is there, the criminals would ensure that they would never reach to the tip of the pyramid. So hackers were smart. I don't want to tell that they are becoming smart. They are smart, but they are becoming more sophisticated, more organized. And you will be surprised, in India, in southern India, there is a Vipassana meditation course for hackers. Okay. Imagine a person having a criminal mindset. In general, an hacker is mostly known for his impatience. The general depiction of a hacker is a curly hairs, unshaven face, lot of tobacco. These are the essential features of an hacker, but today hackers are becoming spiritual. Vipassana meditation course for hackers, they are trying to bring in the patience with the hacker community. So, and particularly talking about our country, India has achieved significant progress with respect to Aadhaar and UPI. As per NPCI data, the recent data, UPI processed 8.7 billion transactions in March 22, which is the highest ever since its inception. 11th December, one MP asked a parliament question. The response given by the parliament, the ministry with respect to prevention of UPI frauds, they have talked about the NCRP portal, the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal, where the victim can report if there is any financial fraud that has taken place. And they also have a module which provides an integrated platform which would comprise of police, the banks, the nodal officers of the banks, the Reserve Bank of India, and few others, so that action is taken, immediate action is taken, so that they freeze the flow of money. That is one thing. So the money that is seized from withdrawal is then handed over to the victim after following the legal process. Okay. 1930, I hope you are all aware about 1930, which was started in 2019 to help the victims to report immediately once there is a concept of golden hour. Like we have in accident cases, golden hour, that initial 60 minutes play a critical role. Same way, with respect to financial fraud, the golden hour plays a very significant role. And it is alarming to note that the citizen financial cyber fraud reporting system has more than 12,77,000 complaints till 15th November 2023. So far, more than 930 crores have been saved in more than 3,80,000 complaints. So I think to discuss about this very pertinent issue, we have an eminent panel here. Each one of the panelists coming with a varied background. So I would like to commence this panel discussion with first question to Deepthi. Deepthi is from Dwara Research. Deepthi, how big is the problem of UPI platform abuse by fraudsters in India? Let us be very specific to India. And what are the specific challenges that arise from the fact that most of the victims are non-technical? Because the UPI, with the COVID, we were forced to adopt the UPI and other digital payment channels. So since they are non-technical and many of us are not aware about what to do in case if we become victim. So your views.
Yeah, hi. Hello, everybody, and thank you to DSCI for giving us the opportunity to speak to an audience which I otherwise seldom get a chance to interact with. So Dwara Research is a financial inclusion, financial sector, I would say research and policy advocacy institution that is based in Chennai, but we're also sort of available in other parts of the country too. And I think and our focus is really the low-income individual, right? And so to kind of answer Venkatesh sir's question, and in fact he has very updated data on the number of frauds and the number and the number of crores of rupees that has been saved. But overall, if you just look at, so the numbers aren't available very easily, but from what's available, it looks like we have about 90 billion transactions that have happened in UPI so far since its inception, of which probably there is a lakh and a half, maybe 2 to 3 lakh sort of UPI fraud related issues that have come up in the last year. This is just projecting off whatever data is available as of the previous year. So it does look like the numbers are very small. So should we sort of be worried about it, right? But like he was saying, there is a report by Bureau and Praxis of May 2022 which states that of the sort of 55% of all digital payment frauds is in fact UPI. And then half of it is actually less than 10,000 rupees in value, right, per fraud transaction. And therefore, this is important. This is we also. And in fact, a more recent report by the Future Crime Research Foundation, hosted under IIT Kanpur, found that 77% of all cybercrime is in relation to online financial frauds, right? And a significant part of that is actually UPI. Some research that we did at Dwara Research, qualitative research, found that low-income users are in fact very hesitant to go and report because one, ticket sizes are too small, two, they are typically dissuaded from reporting, perhaps because the ticket sizes are too small. The opportunity cost, right, the loss of wages of 1.5 days going to file a report. And really the last is just the embarrassment of, stating to someone that I have been ripped off. And I'm sure if we ask ourselves in this room how many of us have been, victim to UPI fraud or any fraud for that matter, we would feel embarrassed. So I think just two things which I wanted to talk. One is that these are authorized transactions, and I'm talking of fraudulent transactions which have been authorized by the user, knowingly or unknowingly. Many a times is directly authorized, where somebody sort of convinces me to put in my PIN number, OTP, share it, etc. Or indirectly authorized, in the sense I have enabled screen sharing, and so it's already compromised. And therefore, or I have, or somebody is looking at the PIN number that I'm typing in, and then it goes off. And so the fact that it's authorized becomes a legal contention, right, in terms of whether the person intended to send this money to this person or not. The second feature, what we found, is unintentionality, which is that I did not intend to send money to this person had I known that this person was not what he or she is claiming to be, right? So these are important, but what we've seen from we have field organizations who come back with cases, and I think just spending some time on the nature of these cases is important to understand the complexity, right? One being that so far we've heard of frauds in relation to wishing, phishing, here is a reward, or here is sort of instilling fear or inducing reward. Typically that's the approach. But lately we've also seen significant cases where fraud is orchestrated in a way that that is very deeply embedded in the livelihoods of the individual user itself, right? So we are talking of cases where you have, and this I think was a very important case, I thought it made sense to share here, which is an adolescent boy was asked by his father to man his departmental store one evening. And so the boy is playing his video game, and then he gets a call from somebody who claims to be an army officer. We've all heard of army officer frauds, but imagine this is a child who is not yet 18. And then this person asks for a bunch of products and says, I will pay you money, and then there's a QR which comes in. And then so there is this angle of social engineering, right? And then the boy doesn't know that in a way, by checking balance, you're in a way sending money. And promptly after that, three other transactions happen, such that up to 99,995. 3 transactions together totaling to that is the upper limit of UPI, which comes to 1 lakh. Money gets lost. And so this is his father's money that he has in a way lost, right? And so the nature of, it is so complicated, because today youngsters in the family are really looked at high regard to say, give us solutions for technology, etc. So, and here we have a case where so really nobody is spared in terms of social engineering attacks. So I think that's an important thing. And the second is that there is a lot of confusion in the minds of the user because they are not able to fully discern exactly what happened, right? So again, there is this case of this poor person who's just recharged his DTH, children were watching cartoons, got cut. It took about 15 minutes for the DTH, so recharged it through UPI, and then 15 minutes during which he thought it hadn't come through, so he searched in Google for customer care, but that was a fraudulent number. And so in 20 minutes, DTH came back, so that's all right. But he's in fact gotten defrauded, right? And there is UPI. So the modus operandi is actually very confusing, and there is significant sort of confusion, like the person is not able to say what happened. Sometimes legitimate links are clicked, but it just so happens it happens next to some fraudulent transaction. So the expectation is that the link is actually part of the fraud, the modus operandi of the fraudster. So I'll just kind of stop there.
Yeah. So my next question is to Samir. So Samir, I hope you agree with me that there is a healthy competition in providing better user experience for the customers, and also reducing cognitive burden like the OTP, all those things. In fact, DigiYatra, although there are serious, yesterday there was an article about DigiYatra, how much information is collected, all those things. But when I checked in Bangalore airport, it was seamless. I don't care really, holding those luggage, looking for the ID card, all those things are not required. So now we are in this age of competing for giving better user experience for the consumers and also reducing the cognitive burden. There is a discussion the last, I think November end, there was a discussion about bringing in a 4-hour window for UPI transaction, the first time transaction in between two individuals if some transaction is happening over 2,000 rupees. So they were planning to bring in that 4-hour window. As a banker, how do you look at this sort of control? I don't want to call it as a regulation, because the control which is proposed. Would you think that the people who are who are already very comfortable doing the instant transaction with this 4-hour window, would you think that a genuine transaction, genuine customers' concerns would be affected? Your views, please.
Well, see, let me take a step back. When we think of a digital India or doing the digital transformation, in my view, the most important thing is not simply doing digital, but it is all about being digital, right? So when I am saying that it is being digital, it is very important that 65% of our population still lives in semi-urban and rural areas, right? So whenever a digital transformation is being thought, we have to take care of the large population of our country. When I'm facilitating the financial inclusion, covering this strata of 65% of the population, it is important that certain checks and balances as part of the foundational risk management needs to be taken care. Any initiatives looking into consideration of this 65% should not be rolled out, in my view, just on one fine day. Okay? It has to have certain thought process, certain timelines, certain checks and balances, and then, the initiative needs to be thought of. Second point, when I'm saying about the being digital, another important aspect is about making sure that we bring in a lot of technological innovations which are happening in our country as well in terms of protecting the UPI transactions. Because UPI transactions is not a one organization's responsibility. It's an ecosystem which plays an important role, and that's what I was talking to Deepti some time back, right? It's an entire ecosystem. So if I am transacting, the money is going to, for example, say Paytm wallet. Okay, from there it is being going to the beneficiary account. So the entire system of the banks and the payment aggregators, the lending companies, so-called digital lending companies, and the National Payment Corporation has to play its role. So I think it's not very easy saying that, you implement any digital initiative in our country and then it becomes successful. Of course, the fraudsters, as you rightly said, who are also doing the Vipassana courses these days, are very smart, are one step ahead. So whatever you do, social engineering attacks are bound to happen, right? And we have to have that margin as the residual risk. The only thing what we can do is to certain minimize, for which being digital, under being digital, massive awareness campaign. The second most important things, I don't want to touch on the technological aspect right now, but the most important things would be a user experience. If I know as a user in my own language that say 100 rupees is getting debited from my account and getting transferred to somebody else, that user experience in a vernacular language with a proper flow will help in curbing these minutes to a great extent. So I think there are various other ways possible, some of which I said. There are behavioral based technological solutions which are picking up right now. So hopefully in the next few months, couple of years down the line, those behavioral based solutions will help in handling such frauds effectively in the days to come. But yes, in my view, checks and balances are important. We cannot be comparing ourselves with the West, where in fact in West we are in a way ahead of them. But if the expectations is to have the fund transfer in a jiffy, that's not the way we should think of. The checks and balances are very much essential. Probably that kind of categorizations of the customer, that kind of profiling of the customer about the semi-rural, the senior citizens, the young folks, that needs to be done. And depending on the customer profiling, the level of security controls needs to be taken care of. It cannot be a flat, uniform implementation for each and every customer, right? I am a cyber literate, so probably I don't need even OTP, right, if I'm transacting from a same device. Because device binding is taken care, SIM binding is taken care, that's fine. But if a senior citizen want to transact, be it 100 rupee or 200 rupees, some kind of checks and balances needs to be built. So these are some of the ways which we have to sort of taken into account when the digital India or digital transformation is happening in our country. In my view, that's the way we have to look at it. And that's how I think this menace of social engineering will be reduced to a certain extent, although it cannot be eliminated completely.
Thank you, Samir. So when we talk about fraud, it's not necessary that the digital payment instrument is always compromised. Like you said, the criminals have become sophisticated. Let me give you my own experience. About 15 days before, someone called me. That person has received an email stating that, dear, the name is there, dash is your password. That password is mentioned and that password belongs to that person. And they are threatened, and as a result, they have made the payment using some digital payment channel. So now, when the person narrated to me, this has happened with me and I have paid so much money, and when I asked for her email ID, sorry, I disclosed the victim. So when I asked for her email ID was in breach notification website, like haveibeenpawned.com. So criminals have become so innovative that they go to those breach notification website, they try to get the username and password, both are there, they shoot email to same email ID with the password that is available on the paste bin. So digital payment channels, it's not necessary that digital payment channels are abused or compromised all the time. So now my question to Piyush is, you come from a company named Innovative FinTech. So I would like to hear from you, what are the innovative methods or the solutions in your experience that the entities like the banks, the NPCI and others can adopt to reduce digital payment frauds? I'm not restricting only to UPI frauds. All sorts of digital payment frauds, if these companies come together, what is the solution that you would like to propose?
So good evening, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. So I'm Piyush. I represent Inclusive FinTech Hub. So I have worked extensively in the FinTech and financial inclusion domain. And currently through Inclusive FinTech Hub, we provide consultancy, partnerships, and funding in the same domain of FinTech and financial inclusion. So one of the interesting case that I would like to talk about on the reporting of the fraud itself. So when you look at the lower segment of the customers, right, I would say the moderate segment of the customers, they don't report, at times because they are not aware, at times they understand that it is their destiny, right, that they would have done something wrong in their past life that they are being punished. And if you ask them, they will say, इनका ख्याल भगवान रख लेंगे या कुछ तो इनके साथ गलत हो जाएगा, they have taken my money away, right? So most of the cases, their grievance is maximum up till the God, right? They think that I might have done something wrong, so it is my destiny, right? And that is the reason I have been frauded. Second, as I rightly said, that most of the cases they said that God will take care of this person, they have taken my money away, right? So now from that situation, it was, I'm talking about like 5 or 6 years back, we have moved to the numbers where 1930 is a number where you can call and talk about the frauds. So we have moved, in fact, if you talk about the UPI, earlier what was happening is that most of the peer-to-peer payments where, for example, I am paying money to you, that is called peer-to-peer payments. Even if I'm a small business, I will go to peer-to-peer payments. And the reason being that I do not have to pay the MDR, which is the merchant discount rate, whenever I do a transaction. So now what UPI did, NPCI, is that there will be something called P2P2M, which is like a person can also become a merchant. So you can register yourself like a merchant on a UPI, any of the platform, and you can become a merchant, receive a 50,000 rupees of limit, right? Plus, I think I'm sure that you would have seen this NPCI campaign on Bhole Gyan Se Dhyan Se campaign, right, where Mr. Pankaj Tripathi is talking about it. So I think you rightly said that digital payment is not the only section where the frauds are happening. Anything which is digital is prone to fraud, be it social media. We have seen a lot of deep fakes, everything happening here, right? So some of the innovative ways I think we can do is definitely is a multi-factor authentication that we do. geo-tagging of the location that the person who is there from by the device. I think all the banks are now doing the geo-tagging of the, whenever you're doing this transaction. And is the authorization of the payment happening in a remote manner, or is it happening from the physical device itself, right? So now with the advancement of this multi-factor authentication, in fact, if you look at the architecture of UPI itself, it is of multiple factor, right? It says one-click, two-factor authentication. It binds your device with the UPI ID itself, right? And the second thing is that now they have also taken another route to kind of de-link the UPI ID, whichever is not activated for some time. So if you do not work on that UPI ID for certain months, it will automatically get deactivated, right? So these are security measures that these people are doing, but there's a lot of behavioral thing that has to be mapped, and that comes from users, I would say, education. So that is, and I also propose through my, to NPCI, that why can't we have, I mean, there are, can we have a movies, right, which talks about the entire digital payment, not only something like a small campaign. Can we have movies around that, how someone got defrauded, what is the life? And it has to be not done by any of the traditional media. It has to be done something like maybe Yash Raj movie or something which has something which can pull in these youngsters, right? Those people who are more emotional to understand, because if you realize, these are all behavioral kind of threats and not definitely technical. Same swapping and everything happens. So from there, and as you rightly said, that we also have to be more dynamic in terms of the level of transaction you are doing. You can do a biometric, a behavioral biometric, where you realize that, okay, if the person is not transacting for that much amount on a regular basis, what has suddenly happened that this person is transacting for this much high value? So then you can throw additional question or a challenge or a quiz that do you want to also provide a two-factor authentication or something like a code. So those dynamic kind of things I think could be done, but I must also say that NPCI and the entire government system is working very quickly and very swiftly on all the frauds, and that is the reason they are doing a lot of changes into it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So Deepti, my next question to you. So yesterday I was reviewing application Shuffle Cake. Shuffle Cake offers you plausible deniability of hiding files. Plausible deniability of hiding the files. It's the product name is Shuffle Cake. So when I was reviewing their FAQ, the frequently asked questions, I found one question. Can criminals use your application? The answer is yes. The second question is, are you not concerned about criminals using the plausible deniability, that is the Shuffle Cake? So they had written the answer, if there was a magic switch which would allow only genuine customers to use our application, we would have gladly pressed it. So likewise, with so much of awareness campaigns starting from big B to small Z, a lot of awareness campaigns are going on, can we think of having a magic switch within the UPI app? Is that possible?
I mean, yeah. So I think the idea is really to say, is there a one switch solution to sort of estimating the authenticity of the person I'm transacting with? And I think it's doable. We are not there yet, but it's certainly doable, right? Like, for example, if we have multiple ways to authenticate every UPI ID or bank account, which gets inbuilt into the system. Because the one thing that we should remember is, before UPI itself comes into the picture, we are talking of a SIM card, which could potentially be compromised, an Aadhaar ID, which could be potentially be compromised, as well as a debit card, which could potentially be compromised, and a phone that could be compromised. So if all of these things have to kind of, in a way, work together, and work well enough in order to give UPI a really solid chance at being able to do exactly what you're describing. And there is tremendous effort that's actually going into it, right? Like the Department of Telecommunications has put out significant rules in August 2023 about bulk SIM card issuances, what needs to be done, what needs to be. So, however, we all know, I mean, so there are these cases where an individual SIM card has been replicated 400 times, you know, for the purpose of fraud. So we are talking of scale which is unprecedented, and I won't get into the sort of the legal kind of challenges, but really the question is, what can be do perhaps inside the app itself. So I think in addition to what both my fellow panelists have been talking, and I would agree to what Samir was talking about multiple factor authentication, but really focusing it on specific vulnerable groups, because the speed and the ease of UPI is unprecedented. So it is certainly a hot button topic to say, could we introduce an additional factor of authentication, right? Because it means, and there is all this terminology floating around called positive friction, because you want to say, we are introducing friction, we are introducing a few more seconds into the transaction, and that is for your protection, right? So we could have sort of default positive frictions installed into individuals who have been profiled as being, say, for example, the elderly, the disabled, the, I don't know, digitally illiterate or naive. And some of these are subjective, some of these are very obvious to say, how can you profile, right? At the time of account opening, a lot of this information is already captured. So there's so much more that can be done there. And for maybe people who are not proficient, people who have been on UPI for less than a year. So there are these categories where it makes sense to introduce this additional friction, even if it means slowing down the transaction. And I think overall, the question from a public policy angle is, does it make sense to introduce something like this now versus, we can't do it in the past, but versus maybe a year from now, right? The question is, when is that golden moment? And I feel like the time is now, right? It's good. It's a good time, and that's why we are hearing all of these suggestions. I think members of parliament talking about introducing a 4-hour friction, but 4 hours seems absurd, right? When we think about 4 hours, and I'm like, no, I want it to happen right away. So a few seconds is certainly doable if we can think of 4 hours. The other, I think the important point, the other thing was really around a lot of the UPI kind of social engineering frauds happen because of a lack of familiarity about features in the app. So like Samir was saying, let's not launch everything in a single day. So for example, now when we have new features being added into the app, we don't want to switch that on by default, but rather can it be an opt-in, right? And these are these are design solutions that are being used. These are not new or unique, but these are being used elsewhere too. But what is an opt-in when it comes to this? And similarly, if, and as we know, a lot of the fraud, UPI sort of frauds happening on UPI ecosystem are around collect requests, because people don't know what a collect request is. They always think that if something comes, I have to press on the green button and it goes. The second is the QR code. You cannot there is no collect request to the QR code. It's not possible, right? But a lot of people don't know that. So when people say, I'm going to send you the QR code and you click it and money will come to you, actually, I'm clicking the QR code and I'm actually sending money. So some of these things, these features which people are unfamiliar with, which they're clicking for the first time in UPI, even if they have used it for, say, 6 months, we could introduce some additional tutorial where it's a click-through, it's a quick click-through, but people at least understand what they're getting into. We could have, and taking a leaf from the video gaming side of things, right, where we have sandbox environments that you can practice specific games or specific features of games before you actually enter into the game itself. There's so much that can be done because we have the best brains in the private sector, in the tech space, so much that we can do. And I think the last point I just want to talk about was the GRM itself, right? The transactions happen so really quickly, right? Less than a second. But then the GRM, of course, we can't have in-app GRMs that can be as fast for obvious reasons. But the question is, what can we do to make sure that the in-app GRM is a space that people can actually engage in? And I'm talking of the constrained users who otherwise wouldn't understand. Today we know that almost all UPI apps have an option where you can go to a transaction and click on fraud if you want to call it as fraud. But just calling it as fraud doesn't mean it's going to file an FIR or trigger a complaint in the system, right? They're still using that data for some analytics, which is important. But what more can be done there, right? Our understanding is from some primary research that we have that's happening now, is we're thinking how can we think of the GRM itself, the redesign of the GRM so that it works better. And what are the kind of basic requirements, right, that the GRMs should, in-app GRMs in digital payments, in UPI payments can have to really up the experience of the billion users that we are really concerned with here. I'll just...
Yeah, thank you. So Samir, so the boundary between the corporate and criminal investigation, I can say it doesn't exist or it has blurred, okay, because majority of the data is with the corporate. When police, they are conducting any criminal investigation, they will have to rely on the information that they need to obtain from the intermediaries or the banks. Likewise, if bank is doing some investigation, they have identified some IP address, how do they convert those numbers into physical address? So that's where the cooperation of the law enforcement is very much required. So this issue of fraud prevention or fraud investigation, how do you see the regulatory bodies and the law enforcement agencies coordinating so that the fraud prevention or the effectiveness of the investigation as well as prosecution of the financial frauds is improved? What are your views on this?
See, very recently, RBI has taken a very fantastic step of bringing all the relevant people together, which means the banks, the telcos, the law enforcement agencies, the NPCI, and also, as I said, the payment companies, likes of Paytms and Google Pay and PhonePe, etc. So I'm clearly see the intent in bringing all the relevant parties together and explaining them about their individual roles and responsibilities so that the end user, the consumer who is become a victim of the financial frauds gets justice in real time. So things are in pipeline. The intent is established. The people are working right now. Probably there would be some kind of evolution or automation is going to happen in this entire workflow by means of having the API-based systems which is being designed right now. And so that, in fact, one leg is implemented in the form of the ADF between the bank and the RBI, slightly different use case. But the architecture, the same architecture is being leveraged for the financial fraud management as well. So soon probably you'll find the quick redressal of the frauds which is happening so that the end customer will get benefited out of it. 1930 is a fantastic, right now the mechanisms where the common person can upload his complaint or even on cybercrime.gov.in and at least he will sort of get some kind of assurance from the law enforcement agencies about after the launching the complaints, etc. Investigation, is a problem because of the fraudsters operating from different locations, which is very difficult to track. And I was talking to somebody who investigated the Jamtara. Mr. Akhilesh Singh is the IPS officer, very young, bright IPS officer. So one of the challenges he faced even in Jamtara is when it was trying to nab the culprit is he could reach the village, but he really could not go where the fraudster was because he was continuously changing the location. These are some of the practical problems, but yes, with technological enablement, with the architecture which is being put in place right now, at least there is as I said, the intent is being established. Hopefully in the next few months you'll find a lot of good way of customer getting benefited out of this enterprise. We'll have to wait and watch.
So Piyush, for you. So I think when we're talking about fraud prevention, I think we shouldn't discount the merchants because if nowadays the merchants with respect to the UPI adoption, the QR code or the UPI ID, the merchants are some Kirana stores guy who would have placed a QR code in front of his shop. So from securing the merchants' perspective, how banks and the third-party application providers play some role with respect to safeguarding the merchants' transactions?
No, so definitely I work a lot with MSMEs, and the challenge they face is that in most of the cases when customers are not aware, so I would say that this is a collective problem where many people are not aware about the challenges of UPI itself. For example, whenever we have to pay a very small value, we just scan the QR code and don't verify if the name on what is coming on our UPI and the name with which the merchant registered is the same, right? So what happens, you just make the payment, and what happened in few of the cases is that someone else would have put in a QR code which the merchant is not aware. Let's talk about any kirana store or any tea stall, right? So at times what happens that whenever the person is making the payment, and for that the customer as well as merchant both needs to be educated that whenever you're accepting the payment even through QR code, the person has to kind of, cross-check, is this the name of your stall, right? That is very much important, because most of the time you will see that the UPI payment goes wrong is that you have paid to a wrong bank account. And why happened? Because you have not done it. You have not checked the name, right? And that is a reason, precise reason that NPCI is giving the name, right? For example, I can have my UPI ID as anything at ICICI, right? But the moment you try to verify, it says it is Piyush Singh, right? And that is purely the security feature. So the features are there, security is there. The only thing is that we are not paying heed to it, and because of which there are a lot of, I will not say it's a fraud. You won't say it's a fraud. It's a negligence, right? It's a negligence. Don't term it as a fraud. Fraud means that you don't know what you're doing, or what you're doing is that you are doing something correct, but something else has happened, right? That's get categorized as fraud. This is not fraud. This is negligence on the merchant's part, on the customer's part, right? Talking about the dispute management, very soon there will be a platform of which NPCI and Reserve Bank of India is working on. So it is a unified grievance system for all kind of digital payments. So whether it is on Bharat Bill Payment System, UPI, or AEPS, Aadhaar payment, or anything, the moment you register a complaint, it goes to a common dashboard, common platform, right, where the government can track that what kind of transactions or what kind of frauds are happening more, right? So there, it is already in the offing, and I think 3 or 4 months back, I was in an event where Mr. Nandan Lekani was also there in the panel, and he also talked about that very soon we will have these kind of platform where it will be an interoperable. Anybody can reach out to them, and then all the banks will be plugged on the other side so that they can see what kind of frauds are happening. It's not like that you have to go to a bank to file this complaint. Any channel that you choose to file a complaint, it goes through that system and you can check, right? So from the merchant perspective, I think that is one thing. The training part is missing. We have to educate them that what are the basic things that you have to take care of, because if you segregate these two things, then you will realize that the frauds, what we call fraud, is not actually not a fraud but a negligence, and hence there are a lot of customer education that is required rather than just the technical aspect of it. And I'm sure that we all are from the technology background, so we know that there was a very favorite saying which says that convenience is directly proportional to security, right? So the more secure the system is, the inconvenience will grow, and the more convenient the system is, the security will go down, right? So, but I think with multi-factor authentication, these kind of sayings are of past, but still, the moment we talk about that 4,000 should be reduced to 2,000, everything else, right? Even I think whenever you add any new bank account in your bank, there is a cooling off period, right? There is a reason there is a cooling off period where they say that you cannot transfer more than this much amount, and the account only get activated after 30 minutes or so, right? So there are reasons they are putting in something, and these are causing inconvenience, but these are for some reasons, right? And I'm sure that these NPCI is also working on a process that if you have made a payment to someone, there is a cooling off period within 30 seconds or 1 minute, you can recall the payment back, right? So those kind of things are happening. So I would say more than fraud, probably we have to categorize what is a fraud and what is negligence. So if you call all negligence fraud, then we are alarming a wrong bell, and everybody will be alert for something which is not a fraud, but is more of a negligence, and hence we will not be able to target the right problem. That's what I think.
Thank you so much. So before I summarize, if there are any questions from the audience. Nisha.
Good evening, sir. So my question is about, like you talked about phishing, wishing and all, right? But there is one more concept called as SIM cloning. So suppose if somebody like hacker or somebody, the fraudsters, they are able to clone your SIM, whether you are educated or not, it does not matter then, right? So whether you are aware or not, if your SIM is cloned, we know that there is a CEIR website recently launched, but okay, fine. How you are going to make sure from your side, like from the government side and from the community, suppose I'm the Google Pay or suppose I'm the Paytm, whatever, the different kind of applications are there. My UPI, if SIM is cloned, is going to be breached. Whatever the amount is going to be like transacted from one account to other account, this will happen, right? So then what is the solution for this, especially for SIM cloning?
So, if it's about the SIM cloning, definitely that should be categorized as a fraud. It's not negligence, right? Because that is something that was done without your notice. Second, I think this is where the multiple disciplinary thing like, say, NPCI and TRI and everybody, Telecom Authority has to come together. But I think even here, multi-factor authentication can come, right? For example, if there is a device ID which was bound to your SIM card, right? And if suddenly the device ID has changed, the IMEI number, right, that has changed. Again, I would suggest that there should be some precaution, right? And then that's when the system should throw additional questions, right? What is the name? What is the name of your bank? Or can you put in the last 4 digits of your bank account number or your debit card number, right? Those are the things that could be done rather than just registering. Because even if you try to register the UPI for the first time, even if you change the device, then you have it's a fresh registration that happens, right? The system binds your device and SIM card and your mobile number, everything together to identify if this is the same number. So I think whenever there's a device change, I think these kind of multi-factor authentication they already do, but throwing additional challenges definitely will be inconvenient, but a way to kind of find out that why it has happened. Because and that's where even I think all the telecom operator will also have to come through that how easy is to clone or to change a SIM card on someone else's name. So I think that is something that I could think of from top of my mind.
I would like to showcase you one problem. My daughter recently faced one cyber fraud where from housing.com she went for a place, rented place. First QR code she put 2,000 rupees, he asked for 2,000, then he said, okay fine, it is okay, you put, it's not, I mean you will get it back and you put 20,000, it was only 2,000 which you put. Next time she put 20,000 and all of a sudden everything was out, right? She tried to reach back, there was no chance of reaching the same person there. Then she called 1930, there was no response. Then she went for that mail ID which we normally give, info, that one. She put a complaint there, then she went to a police station. They said, it's not a cyber crime, we don't deal with this. So I think there is a lack of awareness at our government sector also, where what to be considered as a cyber fraud, what is to be considered, under what category you want to put this.
I just want to share in one incident. So when UPI was launched, I was one of the early adopters of UPI. So I did one transaction from Google Pay. I will not take the name of the PSU bank which was linked to it, right? So I was just trying to do this DTH recharge and it couldn't happen, right? My money got stuck. So I went to bank to say that this has happened. And the bank staff told me, why don't you go to Google's office? You have used Google Pay. I said, did you really, I mean, am I in my sense? Or he said, go to Google's office and ask for the refund. This is Google, I mean, you are the, I mean, so if you look at the UPI architecture, the TPAPs has no role to play, right? There is a issuer bank, there is a acquirer bank, and then there is just a payment transfer. So I think from there we have advanced to a much level where if you go to a bank branch, they will ask you to go to Google Pay office and file a written complaint to them, right? To Google's office in Gurgaon or Hyderabad, wherever they are, right? So I think from there, but as you are asking that when there are these kind of changes that happens that nobody is taking cognizance of the complaints filed. So I think that is the reason now these kind of cases were happening, that now we will be having a central kind of a grievance redressal system where there will be a tag defined that within how many days you have to solve this. If nothing has happened, then there are steps to doing it. So and now what happens that these things happen when you approach let's say a bank, right, in a very physical manner. But if you're filing something online or through an email, then they have to revert on to close it, right? So I think from that perspective, that is important. We have to maybe wait for some time, but I think 1930 and National Cyber is something that can come. Obviously, we are still away from those days that I narrated, कि भगवान उनसे बदला लेगा, right? So there is no Bhagwan, I mean there is Bhagwan, but we will not take revenge for the 2,000 rupees, right? शायद उनको punishment ना दे, but the thing is that we have moved away a lot from that and now we have a system. And I can assure you that a lot of things are happening on security. And so yeah, I mean, that's how I would say, but anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, one last question, please.
Right. So my name is Nikhil. I'm part of Samir's team only. So one question that I had, and this is for everyone. See, while I mean, my perspective is that the more the players, like Samir mentioned, the more the players we have in the payment ecosystem, the more the complexities are in terms of interoperability, in terms of connectivity, in terms of exchange rules, responsibilities, etc. So one of the form of digital payments is of course cards, right? Where there is an issuer, there is an acquirer, and then there is a network, payment network, so many players, aggregators, etc. So for every component or every process that is there within this payment, that is the cards payment ecosystem, there are various compliances, like there is a PIN related compliance, there is a point-to-point encryption related compliance. Similarly, there is an environment that is DSS related compliance. So similarly for UPI, do you think some kind of a compliance at various, with the various role players can bring some more security and assurance, stability into this entire ecosystem of UPI? That's the question.
So I would say that if you look at UPI, what UPI had done to the entire ecosystem of opening architecture, if you look UPI beyond payments, it has done a wonderful work of differentiating between consent and the owner of the account, right? So whenever earlier, before UPI was used to happen, that if you are a customer of, say, HDFC Bank, you can only initiate a payment through HDFC Bank, right? These people who are like from AISS Spirit and everybody said that can we detach consent from the owners, right? So can Google Pay take consent on behalf of the customer, right? So now what is happening, if you look, you do not own a bank account, you do not have a bank account with Google Pay or Phone Pay, right? But what they are doing is they're managing a consent. They're only managing your consent and nothing else. They are managing a consent. What they're doing, you have entered the OTP and PIN number on Google Pay or Phone Pay or Paytm or anything, right? What they are doing, they are saying, hey, here's your customer who has consented to deduct 20 rupees from the bank account. Now bank is not collecting the consent. The consent is taken care by someone else. So if you look at that model where you are detaching the consent from the owner, right, which means that it is truly democratizing the entire movement. And that is the reason we have multiple parties. You look at account aggregator, you look at blockchain. Everybody has different parties who do not trust each other, and hence they said consent will be taken by someone else, owner will be something else, and hence if you look at all the platforms that are now getting developed, be it ONDC, be it account aggregator, everything is working on the same model, and hence whenever new technology comes, everybody will say it's a UPI moment. Why? Because UPI architecture itself is so beautifully designed that you are not bound to a system. Ideally, would you have imagined that even if I'm using an HDFC Bank UPI app, I can register my ICICI Bank into it, right? That's a kind of interoperability and open system that we're talking about. You can go to HDFC Bank, you can add your SBI bank account as well, right? That is the beauty of interoperability. Why should I get bound by only one, and why can't I have an interoperable system? So if you talk about that, that's the beauty of multiple party, and that's open up the architecture that also reduces the monopoly of some of the companies that we were talking about. That if you have to get your bank transaction, come to me. Take the entire 20-page or 50-page, right? And pay 7,500 rupees or 75 rupees per page. Now it is not possible. You go to account aggregator, you give consent. Now even if you look at the account aggregator case, the consent is taken by some other entity, right? It's a regulated entity, it's called NBFC account aggregator. It is different from bank. Now bank cannot deny that I will not give the details. Why? Because with OTP and PIN number, essentially what a company is doing is that they're taking your consent. That do you consent? So can we move that consent to another platform or not? And that was the entire architecture of designing the UPI. So I think that was the move, but yeah.
I think having said that, because UPI is primarily a domestic payment instrument or a channel, probably, and because in the cards there are franchises involved like Amex and Visa and Master, so it's a completely global payment system. So the standard was enforced, developed, implemented, etc. But for UPI, you see, RBI has come up with the Digital Payment Security Master Direction, right? So that's a designed guiding document for implementing digital payment security, and is applicable to everybody, all the players. So there is no ISO standard in that sense, right, or a PCI standard in that sense. But a regulatory mandate is there in the form of DPS?
Yeah, so before we conclude the session, I would request Deepthi to give a brief insight into the research paper that we are doing.
Yeah, so the idea here is that we think about various components within the UPI ecosystem. So this is a white paper that DSCI and Dwara Research are jointly sort of releasing. Hopefully this will happen in January of 2024. But the idea is to actually look at and talk to, have extensive sort of interviews, conversations with various actors in the ecosystem. We've done that and we have written up the paper, which is now going to be under review by DSCI. The objective is really, I think, very much what came across from this, right? What are the plethora of ideas or suggestions that we could place after we've understood what the nature or what the complexities or what the nuances of each aspect of this problem is, because it's a multi-stakeholder, it's a fairly sophisticated environment, multiple players are there. How can we kind of shift the ecosystem to a place where there is significant cooperation by design, right? You need cooperation not by the various actors by design, so that we end up having a much more enhanced quality of security for UPI users. So I think broadly that's the objective around which the paper has been written up. But yeah, I mean let me just stop there because I don't want to preempt the context.
Okay, thank you so much all the panelists. So to quickly summarize, I think fintech innovation, sky is the limit. The debate of what we can do versus what we should do. So that debate should never exist with respect to fintech innovation, because at the end of the day, the consumers get a lot of benefit with fintech innovation. And also the burden of educating the law enforcement agencies is very important, because when this AIPS related frauds started rising last few months, I received a call from a police officer asking for, I am unable to install AIPS app on my mobile. So he's unaware about the AIPS, how AIPS functions. I cannot download AIPS app on my smartphone. That itself he was not aware. So I think while coordination is very much required, the regulation should also should not tend to limit the tech innovation. It should not curb the tech innovation. And law enforcement capability building, that can happen only when all the relevant stakeholders come together on a single platform, share the best practices. Law enforcement might be having a lot of use cases which the fintech solution providers or the regulators can come up with some solution which are effective. So I think let me once again thank all the panelists, and thank you so much. We conclude.